Right, I hope everyone can see the screen. Right, so welcome everyone. We are here today to talk about the Get Active, Get Involved fund that we have open, which used to be called the Hampshire Playing Fields Fund. So if you've heard that name, that may be familiar with you. I'm Joanne Davies. I'm the Grants Manager at the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Community Foundation, and I'll also make some introductions to two of our other team members who we've got here today. So this is a 60-minute session going from 10:30 to 11:30. We're going to do a brief introduction to the work of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Community Foundation. We're then going to have a much more detailed look at the criteria for the grant programme that we've got open at the moment, which is called Get Active, Get Involved. We're going to go through a few hints and tips about completing our application form. So the application form that you will use for Get Active, Get Involved is what we would call our kind of standard application form that many of you might already be familiar with. We're going to have a quick look at the grants calendar for 2024, so you can see what else is already in our schedule. And then we're going to have, hopefully, a good amount of time for some questions and answers at the end. So beginning with just a quick introduction about who we are. The Hampshire and Isle of Wight Community Foundation is one of the UK's 47 community foundations. And what you need to know about us, we are a place-based funder. We cover Hampshire, Southampton, Portsmouth, and the Isle of Wight. We manage a range of grant programmes, which we will show you later on our calendar, and they come from a range of different donors. And we support grassroots community organisations. So most of our funding is for locally based, smaller community organisations with an income under 1 million. Our core aim is to tackle poverty and inequality. And in our last year, so the whole of 2023, we made grants totalling just under 1.5 million. So who are we? So we are a small team of mainly part-time staff. So I've already introduced myself. I'm Joanne, the Grants Manager. We're joined today as well by Catherine, who is our Grants Administrator. Many of you will be familiar with Jackie Scott, who's our Chief Executive. She's not here with us today, but you, I'm sure, will have met her at various events and other webinars. And we're also joined today by Heather, who is our new Communications and Marketing Manager. So Heather, I'm sure, will say hello to everyone when we get to the question and answers at the end. Catherine and I are part-time members of the team. So by all means, do email and call and try and speak to us. But I don't work Fridays. Catherine only works a half-day Friday. So Monday to Thursday are good bets for getting in touch with us. I'm going to talk just very briefly about what we call our impact framework, because people often ask us what sort of grants we make and what sort of funder we are. And one of the key things that we do as a funder is we have what's called our kind of golden thread running through all of our work, which is that we tackle poverty and inequality. So when applying to Get Active, Get Involved, whilst it isn't explicitly a programme about poverty, you could also consider questions such as, how will this project reach underrepresented communities? Or how will I ensure that people on low incomes can take part? So with every grant that we make, we're always making sure really that the work is tackling poverty and inequality as best as it can. We have 5 other impact themes I'm just going to talk you through. So those are employability and skills, flourishing communities, health and wellbeing, crime and safety, and the environment. So every fund that we open will be linked to one of those impact themes. And you'll see there in red that the health and wellbeing impact theme is where the Get Active, Get Involved programme sits. So that means that essentially all grants that we make under the Get Active, Get Involved programme should be working towards an overall outcome of health and wellbeing. So we're now going to move on to talk a little bit more about that particular fund that's open at the moment. So it's called Get Active, Get Involved. And as I said, it has been historically referred to as the Hampshire Playing Fields Fund. So the aim of this grant programme is to fund local community projects that help people to be part of sports and collective physical activity. So we're using quite a broad community definition. sports. So we will absolutely fund the more traditional sports such as football, rugby, tennis, hockey, etc. But we're also interested in reaching underrepresented groups and people who might not instinctively be sports people, but still want to get active and get involved with activity. So we could be funding something like seated chair aerobics, for example, or a yoga group for young people tackling anxiety. The sport activity that you run can take place outside or indoors. If you want to talk over your idea, I'll keep repeating this throughout the presentation, absolutely give us a ring and chat about it. But this is the broad remit of the fund. So let's have a look at the details for the fund. So the fund opened on our website on the 22nd of January, and it will close on the 27th of February. All of our funds close at midnight. Once that fund has closed, we'll go through our usual processes of kind of shortlisting and assessing the projects, and we hope that for successful bids you will hear about and be notified of funding kind of early May. So when you're writing your application, the funding period is from May 2024 to May 2025. This is 12-month funding that we're offering. You don't have to stretch your work over the 12 months. So you could say that predominantly you're going to be kind of a summer and autumn activity, and that you want to start your work in May and maybe run through to kind of the October half term. That's fine. We are looking for sustained work as opposed to kind of one-off events, but it doesn't have to run exactly across the 12 months.
Joanne, I'm really sorry to interrupt your presentation, and sorry to everybody else. There's somebody in the waiting room. I wondered if you would have the opportunity just to let those people in.
That's a very good question about how I do that when I'm in.
Sorry to disrupt the flow, everybody.
I think I might have to come out of this. I'm not sure how I do it, Heather, without...
If you press escape.
I'm going to have to stop sharing.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us for a moment.
I can't see anyone in the waiting room.
Right. Okay, I'm sorry to have interrupted.
Sorry, I can't see anyone in the waiting room.
Okay.
Can you all still see the screen? Sorry, I've confused myself now.
I'm sorry about that.
Sorry, I'm a bit lost. Can everyone see that now? Can everyone see that?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic, thank you. Right. I might do this slide again. So let's go through the fund details. So it opens on the 22nd of January. It closes on the 27th of February. So the funding notifications will come out by early May. So that will enable organisations to have 12 months of funding, which will go from May 24 to May 25. The size of grants on offer are slightly bigger than last year. So if you remember the Hampshire Playing Fields Fund last year, we only went up to 2,500. We've doubled the size this year. So the grant size is now 1,000 to 5,000 you can apply for. Some of our grant programs you'll be familiar with don't always cover all of our geographical areas, but this one does. So you can apply if you're working in Hampshire Portsmouth, Southampton and the Isle of Wight. And we touched on the impact themes earlier. So as I said before, this particular fund is covering the theme of health and well-being. So all of our programmes have what we would kind of call programme related criteria. And I'm going to go through the 3 fund criteria with you now for Get Active, Get Involved. So the first thing that we're looking for from your applications is that the community organisation making the application should be showing that in its day-to-day work, it's already doing stuff that will support, promote and engage communities with sports and physical activity. So it doesn't have to be necessarily the only thing you do, but we're interested in organisations which already have some sort of track record maybe of working with and engaging communities to get active. You could also be an organisation which is involved in kind of the maintenance and access of outdoor spaces. So the heritage of this fund from Hampshire Playing Fields is very keen that we do also support organisations which are kind of custodians of outside spaces. So that's an area which we welcome as well. The second programme criteria touches on what I was talking about before, about within all of the work of the Hampshire Isle of Wight Community Foundation, we're wanting to tackle kind of poverty and inequality. So within your application, you should be really clear how the work that you're seeking funding will be open to the local community, so that you aren't putting high cost barriers in the way, for example, for them getting involved, and that the work will reach maybe new and underrepresented communities. So by new and underrepresented communities, we mean, for example, that you might be a football group which have lots of sessions for young boys, but actually you might be getting an increasing amount of interest from setting up a young women's group. So it could be that you use the funding for that. It could be underrepresented in terms of people who maybe are in a wheelchair, people who are older, who maybe don't necessarily gravitate towards sports, but could really benefit from regular, healthy wellbeing sessions. So as I said before, it doesn't have to be a traditional sport that you're using. It could be something like a seated exercise program. It could be, Nordic walking we funded last year. So you can really think outside the box around how you get people active and involved. The third programme criteria, so safeguarding, is something that we ask across all of our grant programmes, but we put a particular focus on it within Get Active, Get Involved, because historically we have struggled to find organisations sometimes which hit our robust safeguarding policy requirements. So what we're looking for from organisations applying is that you have a safeguarding policy that you submit with your application. And that safeguarding policy, even if you're using the policy of a national organisation, should be locally adopted and regularly reviewed and embedded within your organisation. So, for example, if you were part of the Scouting movement, it's absolutely fine for you to use a nationally recognised Scouting safeguarding policy, but what we would be looking for is that that policy was locally adopted, so that you had a named person within your organisation who was the safeguarding lead, that you showed within that policy how you had adopted that at a local level and how you had embedded it in your organisation. So that can be as simple as if you work to a national policy, showing at the beginning or the end of the policy how you have created local sign up to that policy. Again, if you've got particular questions about that, we can talk through those at the end, or you can give us a call, but safeguarding is a key requirement of this fund. So let's talk about what the Get Active, Get Involved funding can cover. So we can cover staff costs from it. So that could be, for example, a coach who actually runs some of the sessions. We can cover volunteer costs. We know that a tremendous amount of sporting activity is run by volunteers, and it might be that they're having to get the bus or drive to come to the session, so you could recoup their out-of-pocket expenses. Activity costs are definitely something that will cover. So those could be all the things like the room hire that you need, the pitch hire. It could be giving people soft drinks or refreshments as part of it. Basic things like first aid kits that you might need to make your project safe and well run. We also do welcome training as part of it. So if you've got volunteers who would really benefit from training to help them deliver some of the activities, that can be included under activity costs. We are not, we'll go on to some exclusions in a minute. So we're not a large equipment funder, but we can cover smaller items of equipment. So we could cover the costs of replacing or repairing things that you use for those community activities. So that would be things like footballs or netball bibs or yoga mats, those sorts of things. So yeah, we will cover equipment that helps you maybe expand the activities or reach a greater number of people. So maybe you've got 2 nets at the moment and you need a 3rd net because your sport is so popular and well received. We will consider core costs as part of these applications. So by core costs, we mean the costs that you incur just running your organisation on a day-to-day basis. So that could be something like if your administrator within the organisation helps you send out newsletters or publicity for this, you could put a contribution to that. If you've got like a central manager or a coordinator who maybe oversees monitoring, safeguarding, all those sorts of things of the project, you can put a contribution towards that under core costs. So let's have a look at what we cannot fund under this. So as I've already touched on, we won't fund significant capital projects under this. So sometimes there's a fine line between where equipment moves into capital projects, and you can absolutely ask us questions about that. But the sorts of things that we're very unlikely to fund are large floodlights, upgrades to changing facilities. We also won't fund things like drainage, resurfacing car parks, more kind of structural things like that won't be funded. We also won't fund equipment for individual ownership. So if you're putting footballs, for example, on the budget, we would be really keen that those footballs were used for community use as opposed to being given to individuals. That's not to say that you couldn't lend equipment to people or people couldn't take it home to practice, but it's about the individual ownership that we wouldn't have. This is a community fund, so we won't fund kind of bursaries or any elite sport opportunities. We also won't fund projects that still have a significant funding requirement on them. So that links a little bit to the capital projects. If you said you need 30,000 to update all of your floodlights and you're asking for 5,000 from us, therefore it falls down on several points. A, because it's a capital piece of equipment, and secondly because we really want organisations to be in a position where they can essentially hit the ground running with the projects. And if you have a significant fundraising ask still in place, that may delay the start of the project. We won't fund one-off events. We're really looking for a sustained period of work. As I said earlier, the funding is over a 12-month period from May 24 to May 25. So you don't have to cover that whole 12 months, but we want a good amount of activity dotted across a portion of that 12 months. We won't fund national charities or statutory bodies as part of that. That does unfortunately include parish councils. We get a lot of inquiries for this programme by parish councils, and within this programme they are seen as a statutory body. And as I've touched on before, safeguarding is really important in this. So if you submit a safeguarding policy as part of your application that we don't feel meets our standards, that is a potential reason why you will be turned down at shortlisting. So this is a popular fund. We are always oversubscribed. So those 3 areas that we talked through earlier, so that you should be an organisation already engaged with kind of community sport and activity, you should be showing how you work with underrepresented new communities, and safeguarding are kind of key elements that we will need to see reflected in your bid. And if not, you will not be shortlisted. Our website has a couple of illustrative case studies on community projects, so have a look at those. And as I we'll keep saying throughout the presentation, do give us a ring or an email to chat through your work. We would much rather have a quick 10-minute chat with you and find out that your project needs a few tweaks or that actually your project doesn't fit, rather than have you go through the whole application process. So yeah, do give us a ring. Speaking of the application process, I'm going to go through, so I'm not going to go through every question or aspect of the application form, but I'm going to hopefully give you a few hints and tips. And for those of you who haven't applied for us before, there may definitely be some nuggets of information that you can take away from this next section. So in 2023, we brought in a new application form. So anyone who applied to us from kind of Easter 2023 onwards, you will have used our new application form. As part of that, we have an online eligibility form, and this essentially asks you 10 very quick tick box questions that help you understand if you meet our core criteria. So I'm just going to go through these quickly because this is something that all of you will see when you make an application. And I just want to set your minds at rest that it's hopefully a really helpful exercise to, again, make sure that your community organisation is eligible to apply before you spend all that time making an application. So when you click apply on our website, you'll be taken straight through to this eligibility form. So I've split the form, there's 10 questions, I split it into 2 screen slides. So the first 5 questions ask you what type of organisation you are. For example, are you a charity? They ask you whether you're part of a larger or national organisation. They ask if your income was under $1 million. They ask about the governance of your organisation. So how many people was on your management committee, board of trustees, directors, etc., and whether you have a safeguarding policy. So all you have to do is tick yes, no, yes, no, yes, no to those. They should be things that hopefully you're fairly familiar with, and as I said, shouldn't take you too long. If we look at the second half of that page, you're asked, does the organisation have a bank account in its name? Do you have a quality, diversity, inclusion policy? Will your work take place within Hampshire, Southampton, Portsmouth, in the Isle of Wight? Is your work charitable? And are you seeking funding for a capital project? So again, hopefully those should be fairly simple things for you to tick and affirm. The next slide just shows what happens if you tick something which maybe might not be eligible. So this shows you that if you apply and say that the type of organisation you are is a school, you'll get a little red box that explains to you why this might be a potential restriction. So in this case, it will say that we can't fund work that is a statutory responsibility and that you should call us to have a chat about that. So it's always worth trying to give us a call if you get those red boxes, just to make sure that you're understanding the questions right and just to help us explain to you what that particular restriction might be. We can go through this again in the Q&As if anyone has any questions about that eligibility form. So the next section I'm going to have a look at, once you've gone through that eligibility form, you'll start the application itself. So the application it's possible to save it as you go along. And I'm just going to go on to a few of the questions that come up in kind of what we would call the project section of the application form. So the first half of the application form will ask you about the work of your organisation, and the second half is more focused on the project that you're applying for. So one of the key areas that organisations sometimes fall down on when they're applying for Get Active, Get Involved is that I think they presume that because they're applying for a football club or a sports group that everyone absolutely knows what that would do. It's just a football club, it's just a sports group, they say. So sometimes we'll get quite short answers saying, what's the target group? Local people, what are you applying for? Football club. So I'm going to go through these project questions and just show you how hopefully you can pull out a little bit of information that might strengthen your application and tell us a little bit more about your work. So the first question that you're asked under the project section is how you would describe the target group that you're seeking to reach. And on our application form, all the way through, you'll be given blue text under the boxes, which hopefully gives you some hints and tips. But this is a really key question for us. And it's helpful if you can give us as much information about that target group as possible. So is this a new target group for you? Are you targeting men or women? Are you targeting a particular age group? Are you targeting people from a particular community of interest? Are you targeting people, yes, who you've had challenges targeting in the past, and maybe this is going to be a new approach? So it's a really interesting question for us. The next question is about what the activity is that you're delivering. And again, it's really useful for you to kind of break down a little bit about that, what that would look like. So if you're funding something like football sessions, maybe paint a picture of how often that would happen. So you could say it happens every Tuesday night between 6 and 9 o'clock. You could say we run summer programs as well. This should focus on what you're asking for the funding form. So you don't have to tell us everything that your organisation does in this section. You're focusing on what the funding will deliver. So yeah, tell us the types of things that will happen, the types of activities that might take place. Yeah, really paint a picture of the work that will take place. So these next two questions are also about the project. So where will the activity take place? So again, on the application form, you'll see that it gives an example of this may be run on the village playing field, which is obviously quite applicable for the Get Active, Get Involved Fund. So you could tell us that it's taking place on a playing field. You could tell us it's taking place within your own premises, within a community hall. It's really useful, again, to just paint a picture of what that is. So you could tell us that it's on a local bus route. You could tell us there's ample parking. You could tell us it's a really lovely space, which has got ample provision to run the group that you're hoping to host there. The next question is who will deliver the activity? So as I said earlier, we know that lots of sports groups and activities are run by volunteers. So you might be able to say in this question that actually you've got a really dedicated team of volunteers who will lead this. It might be that you've got a particular staff member, or you want to bring in a particular staff member with the funding. So again, just really help paint a picture of who it is who's going to be delivering this activity. For every open programme that we have on our website, once you click through into it, you'll have some top line information about what that funding covers, and then you will have some blue hyperlinks that give you more information. So you'll see here that we're showing you that there's a blue hyperlink called See Application Form Guidance. And if you click into this, it's a really useful document. It's a really useful document that lists out all of the application questions so that you can use that as a planning tool when you're putting your application together. It also lists the supporting documents that you will need for your application. And we've had really good feedback that that's a really useful form, for planning and thinking through your application. We're going to touch on those supporting documents now because they do form a key part of your application form. So you'll be asked as part of all of our standard application forms to give us these following supporting documents. We're interested in your latest set of financial accounts. So that will be for the last full year that you've signed off. If you're a new organisation, we would ask you in that place to provide your budget for the current year that you're working in. We would ask for your governing documents. So if you're a constituted community organisation, that would be your written and signed constitution. Or if you're a company limited by guarantee or a charity, it would be those governing documents. We do check if you're a charity or a company limited by guarantee on Companies House or the Charity Commission. We've talked before about safeguarding, so we will ask for a copy of your latest safeguarding policy. Please do make sure that this is dated and that it's clear when this was last updated and when it will next be reviewed. They're really key ways that you can show that that's a live embedded document. We also ask for some sort of equalities policy or statement from your organisation, just again underpinning that you are an organisation that seeks to work with underrepresented communities or remove barriers to community access. We ask at this point for your a bank statement. This has two uses. It shows that it shows that the bank statement, you have a bank account linked to the community organisation, which is part of our due diligence process. It's also helpful for us to have that paperwork on file to process successful grants promptly. So that's quite an important document to enclose. And we also ask you to list the people who are organised in the governance of your organisation. So if you're a charity, that would be your trustees. If you're a company limited by guarantee or a KIC, it would be your directors. And if you're a constituted community group, that would be your management committee. We've talked a little bit about our website already. We do have a section on the website with lots of frequently asked questions on it. We do have a little chat bot on there as well. So have a look on the website if you're thinking about making an application, because there's lots of really useful information on there. Here are just some general hints and tips about writing an application. So this will be applicable for Get Active, Get Involved, and lots of the other funds that we open. So when you're writing your bid, please write for an audience, i.e. us, thinking that we don't know anything about your organisation or your funding idea. So sometimes an organisation might put an application in thinking, oh, I did apply to them a couple of years ago, or I had a grant 3 years ago. I think they know my work. We have different staff who might be reading the projects. We have new staff who might be reading them. We have advisory boards and panels who will be looking at your work. So always write for an audience as if they don't know anything about your work or the area that you're working in. And this links into the next point. Don't expect us to know. Don't expect us to know about your previous work. Tell us about it. So if you've been running this group for the last 10 years, tell us you've been running the group for the last 10 years. If you've won an award for it, tell us you've won an award for it. Make sure you blow your trumpet about all the great work that you've done linked to this, this funding bid. Also, don't presume that we know your local area. All of our staff are based in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, but we won't necessarily know your exact village or your locality where you're working, so tell us about it. Also, if you're working with a particular target community, again, make sure you don't overlook any important data about that. So if you were working with young carers, or if you were working with older people, make sure that you can tell us any data that you have about that. So, you know, their particular needs, the particular barriers they face, it's all really helpful. So this just goes through, again, as part of a standard application form. We've already talked about the things you can apply for Get Active, Get Involved. And as part of all of our standard application forms, you will have the opportunity to put together your own project budget of the costs you would like us to cover. So across all of our funding, you could cover staff costs, volunteer costs, activity costs, core costs, and we talked before that the core costs are the core elements of your organisation that help you to deliver that project. So it could be a contribution to your CEO, your administrator, your finance worker. And as we touched on before, we will cover equipment, but we tend to be a funder that covers smaller items of equipment. So we're just going to end the formal part of this presentation by looking at the 2024 grants calendar. So we are aware that we are a funder that has lots of different grant programs with lots of different opening closing dates. And that can make all of your lives very difficult when you're trying to plan how to make an application to us. So this year, we have tried to plan as much of our 2024 grants calendar in advance and put into the diary when certain programs will open and close. So this has been shared on social media, and we're looking to embed this into our website. So this, you'll see that we've got January 2024 with Get Active, Get Involved open. The next 2 funds will open in March. So we've got Ford Southampton Community Fund. That is only for Southampton and Eastleigh and is going to be around employability and skills for young people. Also in March, we've got the Charles Burnett Memorial Fund opening. That's only for the New Forest. We've got both our Isle of Wight and our Portsmouth funds opening in April. So again, those will be for community organisations working on the Isle of Wight and within Portsmouth. So the Montague, Neville, Durnford and St Leo Cawthorne is part of our Portsmouth City Fund. And then looking forward to the summer, we've got our big flagship fund, including communities opening. So that's a lovely fund because it covers all of our geography. So it covers Hampshire, Southampton, Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight. We're still finalising the criteria for including communities, but it will be similar to last year. It will be a very broad community funding programme with potentially slightly larger grants for 12 months. We've also got 2 corporate funds, which we're also hoping to open in August. There are various irons in the fire that we're also hoping to kind of firm up. So this calendar could grow and evolve as we go through 2024. So please do check our website, and there's a subscribe button on our website where you can sign up to grants alerts and follow us on social media. So yeah, do keep in touch because there's always new stuff opening, new opportunities opening, and all of those funds that I've just talked about will have webinars such as this. So do keep yourself posted. I've put all of the details of how to contact us on here. We will put this webinar up on our website so that, yeah, if you want to re-access it and re-watch it after today, you can access all of this information. Right, we're going to stop the sharing now and move into the question and answer stage of the day.